Lisa, I think most of us don't ever sit back to think about what being in a highly abusive relationship cost us. So, what did it cost you to be in that narcissistically abusive relationship?
I try really hard not to do the math because so much money, and I know that's not what you meant, but I think, obviously there's a huge financial impact for many people who are coming out of these relationships. And honestly, the answer is like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you can earn that back in theory, right? What it really cost me was my sanity. And I feel like it cost me my sense of self. I lost who I was. I became a person that I think personally is unrecognizable. And that when I came out and started talking about what happened to me, the people in my life were absolutely shocked, could not imagine what they knew of me to be the kind of person that would ever have put up with what I put up with. And so it cost me the respect of the people around me, and just sitting with the shock was really hard. Like the look on people's faces, I found really hard to deal with in person. It was so much easier for me to tell the story online than it was to tell the story in person.
Yeah, it cost me, I agree, it cost me credibility.
Mm.
I felt like I waited for people to say, I told you so. That I remember when I first got into that relationship and started posting online about it, posting how happy I felt, like a fairy tale. And it, it was embarrassing for me to then share that not only was it a fairy tale, but it was a nightmare. There was a terrible nightmare. And I felt like people thought that I was smarter than that, and that
Yes.
I had to live with the fact that they thought that I was smarter with that, and now they know that I'm not. The other thing it cost me, and this is just coming up right now, is that because I got married again, my late husband's family, I never really had a firm footing with them, very good, not a real strong firm footing with them.
Hmm.
And because I got married, then it felt like I abandoned them, and have really struggled to regain any type of connection that I had had with them before. I have with them back. It feels like now they've jumped over me, that I've become incidental and not really part of the McAvoys anymore. Because I've kept my late husband's name. I never gave that name up, but and I feel strongly identified to it too. But I'm not for sure they identify me as family anymore, and that to me really chokes me up because I didn't want that loss. I didn't know that I was
Hmm.
going to lose that. But yeah, financially, horrific amount of money, shocking amount of money, and it's in fact, I had the conversation with one of my kids yesterday about just finances and futures and stuff. And one of them says, "I expect that I'm going to have to help you pay for you as you get elderly. As you need more care, I expect that I'm going to have to step in." And like, it's humiliating to have your kids anticipate that you've hurt yourself financially enough so that that you're going to need them because you won't make it to the end of your life. Anyway,
Hmm.
it cost me a lot, a lot. Did it
Yeah.
cost you health? Did you get sick in the relationship?
So, something that I truly didn't really even connect until after, which is so shocking. Sometimes I look back and I think, man, it was so obvious, right? But you don't know then what you know now. So don't hold yourself to that standard. But I
Yeah.
remember feeling something in my chest, and I couldn't make sense of it. It's just like increased heart rate and just kind of like a heaviness in my chest. And I went to my doctor, and I was pregnant at the time. I went to my doctor and I was like, I feel this, and I'm describing it. And he was like, that's anxiety. And I'm like, what? Just get out of here. No, it's not. And then I really realized, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I couldn't figure out what was causing it. Was it work? Was it home? I mean, we argue sometimes, but everybody does. So what could this possibly be? And my partner convinced me that it was his family that was causing me the anxiety. His family was so crazy, so bad, so awful that they were causing me to be anxious. And it made sense. In hindsight, the real realization is that it was him causing it and attributing it to his family to create a divide. But the anxiety was debilitating. And I remember my doctor suggested I go on anxiety medicine. And I remember saying, like, but I'm pregnant, so tell me about the side effects. And he said there's no studies on
Right.
anxiety with pregnant women because nobody's willing to do a study, obviously unwilling to risk it. But he said there's been no side effects that are terrible for the baby, that we know. And he said what's definitely proven is that anxiety and stress while pregnant is definitely bad. Taking the medicine, not bad, so you should take it. And I did, and it helped. but it didn't stop the anxiety. It got worse and worse to the point where I had to up my medication, and it was truly debilitating. If certain situations that I was in, especially when it came to him or his family, I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And I was overwhelmed. I would have full panic attacks, and I could never trace it back to like, hello, you're being abused. That's the root cause of it. It was always like anxiety was my problem. I felt like it was in my head. Now I know stress, anxiety, it affects your whole body, your immune system, your digestion, your sleep, like literally everything. So you may be holding on to that. And of course, reminds me of The Body Keeps Score, the book. But so many
Yes,
health
right.
issues are linked to being abused.
Yeah, I know somebody who was actually cracking teeth. She was gritting her teeth so much, even at nighttime, that she was destroying her teeth. And how many people do you and I know who have autoimmune diseases? In fact, I wish there was a study done that would look at people who survive these types of relationships and the connection to autoimmune, because I know there's a strong correlation. The number of people that I
Mm-hmm.
know that have some kind of either arthritis or they have lupus or just all sorts of inflammatory diseases, asthma.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a whole host of them that's really, really severe. My
Mm-hmm.
sister had MS, and she was in one abusive relationship after another, and then she ended up getting pneumonia, and then the pneumonia, but there was multiple problems, multiple system problems, and it just caught up with her. And that I know that her mental health played a piece of it, that she was getting
Mm-hmm.
so hopeless and so discouraged that she just didn't feel like there's a really solid way out, and that she gave up. I think that has a cost on us too, that psychological impact of feeling like we can't find a way out and can't build a life, because one of the things that happens in these relationships is that just getting out doesn't necessarily mean it's over. We continue to be abused post separation. So this is
Mm-hmm.
this perpetual cycle of abuse that we get into that's very hard to get away from this person, get a life free from this person.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's so true. The amount of things, I'm kind of even thinking, I had a lot of sleep issues, and as a general rule, like it takes me 6 minutes to fall asleep, according to my Fitbit, and I'm a good sleeper. I don't struggle with that, but I did struggle to sleep. I couldn't, I was awake, and I am now realizing like a lot of abuse happened in the middle of the night. But when you really look at the impact on your health, anxiety, depression, PTSD, sleep disorders, headaches, migraines, digestive issues, cardiovascular issues, autoimmune, like we're talking about, it's literally
Yeah.
endless. But on the subject of sleep, it drains you and you feel exhausted. And I think that is often on purpose and contributes to just how like run down you feel. And then you're more susceptible to gaslighting and frankly, compliance and submission, which is in many ways exactly what they want.
Right, right. I have a circle of people that I work with. I would say probably it's definitely under 100 people. So just to give you perspective, in within that 100 people that I work with, two of them have suffered heart attacks,
Wow.
and both of them are under 50. Yeah.
Wow.
One is in her 40s. She's a 40-year-plus-year-old woman who suffered a heart attack. It's insane. It's insane. I was very ill. It's hard to know the reasons why I was ill, because there's suspicion that I may have been being poisoned as well. So how do you like tease out what's what? But right after I got out of that relationship, I needed two total hip replacement surgeries. You think, what degree did that play a piece of my? I mean, I know I
Hmm.
went into the relationship already having problems with those joints, but what degree did it speed it up? I also had severe insomnia. I was struggling with my weight. My weight will fluctuate pretty wildly. Um, but my life was chaotic. And I think that was the other part that was really hard, is that I never quite knew what to expect. I couldn't predict even what time we'd eat. I felt like, because of the coercive control, which he really controlled our schedule, I didn't even know when we'd be getting up, when would I be able to go to sleep. I lost over the most basic things. I remember losing control even over being able to make a private phone call. I wasn't even had the privacy to do that, because everything was kind of lived in front of him. We just had no separation. So these relationships are like, to me, felt honestly suffocating, really,
Yes.
really suffocating. I can't imagine even just the consequence of that, not having privacy, not having control. Or I remember even doing the simplest things like putting groceries away and being critiqued about it, or hanging clothes up and being told that I was doing it wrong. I just felt like
Hmm.
I just had no autonomy, no way to just breathe and be myself. And that can't be good for anybody when we live under that kind of loss. You mentioned, though, something, the loss of self. Can you say more about how you felt you lost yourself in that relationship?
Oh, I lived for him, and in hindsight, like that's what they want. That's the goal, that's the conditioning. But I definitely didn't see it at the time. I think, if anything, I actually believed that's what we were supposed to do, right? Two people become in one relationship. And so the decisions that I make, who I am, I identify with him. We are an us. That made sense to me. But I don't think I ever really put a lot of focus on being an individual. And I still had my own individual life. He worked a lot. I had a whole friend group outside of him. I had a whole personality outside of him. I was a certain way at work. But I also wonder sometimes in hindsight now when I look back, I was very assertive at work. And I wonder if there was even a bit of compensation for that. Like I had no power at home, so I would be more powerful at work. But I I know who I am. I know who I was. And I would look at myself in the mirror and just be shocked. Like, how are you in such a bad relationship? And I didn't know it was abuse at the time, despite the very obvious things. But who was I? Like, am I the kind of person that would be in an abusive relationship? Of course not. And yet here I am. So what I would tell myself was that it's not abusive because I would never. I'm too smart for that. As if you could outsmart an abuser. And what we know now, of course, is it's not about intelligence at all. But in the moment, it was like, I would
Right.
never be in a situation like this. So it must not be that bad. It must be me. I was willing to accept that it was me. Despite, like, I would wake up in the middle of the night and wonder where he was because he would say, like, hey, I'm on my way home in a text. And on my way home is, depending on where he worked and what stage of our relationship, somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes to get home. And like 7 hours would pass, his phone's off. And I tell you, I was probably 2 years out of the relationship before I realized he was cheating. I'm stupid. That was, and I was so in love and so committed and so we're an us and he would never. I was blind to it. I thought he was out partying, which possibly was true, but I think there was a lot more going on. I think he was cheating for a lot longer with a lot more people, and I just had no idea. Because that was the one thing I was so sure he would never do, no matter what. I was so invested and so committed, and I trusted him implicitly. And I say this with not, I don't feel any shame to say this. I actually say this, pride is definitely not the word, but I say it to help other people. I genuinely would never have left him. He had to leave me. I don't think people say you're strong, especially my screen name. I'm stronger than before. I'm stronger than before because I had no choice. He left me. I would never have left him. And I am grateful every single day that he left to teach me a lesson and to get me to beg him back because it didn't work. And I don't think I would have had the courage to leave on my own. I'm not sure.
Do you think that the criticism and the gaslighting played a massive role in your loss of self, in your doubting, your loss of confidence in yourself?
100%. I am an incredibly confident person, and I even was raised with sort of like a fake it till you make it kind of mentality, so I can even present in a confident way, even if I'm unsure of something. But when it came to him, and this is so true of like a covert abuser, is that they're not necessarily going to say like you are a B word or to really overtly put you down. I know some
Right.
do, and actually covert narcissists can do that too. They used to do it in private, but mine was much more like, how you're not good
Right.
with money, right? And then sort of follow it with that, or like you just don't understand, or it was insults spoken as truth. And it was maybe something that I was like mildly insecure about, or I could believe that it was a problem. I started to believe that I was the problem spending in our relationship. Meanwhile, he had eyes on what I was spending. I didn't have eyes on what he was spending. And for him, it was like, oh, cash, it's normal. It's normal. He was spending money on drugs and alcohol. And I was spending money at like Starbucks or whatever, but I was also making at least double
Right.
what he made. Not to say my spending necessarily needed to match that, but he convinced me that, and through probably years and just sort of this subtle, how you're not good with money, how you overspend on Starbucks, how, and it was just presented as the truth so many times. And because I trusted him, it was like, okay, I see you're better at money. You get it. You're good at this. And in hindsight, like, no, this guy's like bankrupt. He has no idea about money. He lies about money. He hides money. He overspends. He never thinks about saving for next month. It burns a hole in his pocket. But I'm the problem. But I believed it. And that was a part of what destroyed me, was that I bought into this pitch of his, that I was the issue, or that I was wrong or responsible for our financial ruin. And that was never true. But I have to look at myself and question, like, what made me believe those things? Was my sense of self ever strong? And I don't think it was. But in hindsight now, it's better. Like, I think the good thing, if there can be a good thing about being destroyed, it's that you can build up and become even stronger and really have a really strong sense of self.
Right. Yeah. I got criticized for things like how I wrote letters, or because we were running a vacation rental business. So how I communicated with guests, I would be critiqued about simple things like how I did laundry or did groceries, or even why I spent what I spent when I spent it. Everything came under scrutiny. And then you're right. The subtlety, the comments were, so one of the things that I'm insecure about is my self-esteem, my self-image. And so he would do subtle things like nickname me gorgeous, but then never tell me that I look pretty. It wouldn't matter how I dressed up or what we prepared for. I would never get any kind of compliment. And then he would make sure that when we go shopping, he would point something out that he knew that I wouldn't fit, and then try to make it a public that I couldn't be able to try on this outfit because it wasn't carried in my size or something. There was all these ways of just sort of making me feel aware. And then when I did start to lose weight near the end of it, he commented he could tell I was losing weight, but he had to let me know that I still had that double chin and I needed that plastic surgery to help me with that. But then he would then sabotage the diet by making sure my favorite snack was in the house so that I would struggle to resist it. I mean, all this stuff just to kind of create doubt and chaos and confusion. And what it did for me was, I found, for example, Lisa, I started to stutter, that I would struggle to even say things to people because I would listen to myself and get so self-conscious that I couldn't even speak because I was afraid of saying it wrong. And I struggled at times with mutism, that I couldn't even speak at all. I would know that I needed to speak up and say something, but I'd get wishy-washy because I'm afraid if I'd take a stance, he'd make it into pit it into a fight. Or if I didn't take a stance later, I'd hear about it and ask why I didn't do something about it. I mean, I always felt like everything, there was a right way, and whatever way I was doing it wasn't the right way. So then I just got increasingly insecure. So Stephen, today, do you have hangovers? Because I find I do. Sometimes I do still feel like somebody's sitting over my shoulder reading my letters when I respond to somebody's email, or when I type in a text, I like really think about it. Like one time he said to me, I don't know why you have any friends with the way you maintain relationships. We just would say weird stuff like that, or you're the kind of driver that makes people have accidents. Like, no, I don't see people having pileups behind me. I don't know what you're talking about. But it would just these kind of comments that make you feel like, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong? So you start to like double check yourself again.
Yeah. He would always tell me that people don't like me, but not all people, just some people, you know. And then it's sort of like, that's okay, right? Not everybody has to like you, but why say that? I mean, no, not everybody likes everybody. It's sort of, and this is what's so crazy making about it, is that, like, sure, that's true. Then you're not allowed to get mad at the truth because he didn't say anything wrong. He just said the truth. But like, why do I feel so insulted by that, right? Like, it was the context, and it was, why say that? That's an obvious thing about any person. You want me to know that some people just don't like me, or that I have conflict with everybody that I meet. There's always one person. He would make a comment that everywhere I worked, that there was always one person that I just could never get along with, which is kind of true in fairness. And that's the part that makes it so hard, is like, yeah, well, there's always going to be one person who doesn't like an authoritative, smart, intelligent, powerful woman. Always. And it wasn't just a man. In fact, it was often women that I would have sort of a conflict with, but nothing outrageous. I mean, I don't mean like arguing with people at work, but it was always like, but it's you, right? It would never be presented as like the other person could be part of the problem or part of creating the conflict, or that they were in any way threatened. It was always my personality that led to that. You understand, right? It's just who you are. But I like you.
Oh, yeah, I exactly had those kinds of conversations. You reminded me, in fact, because I just traveled, like really was aware of this. And I actually asked my sons what they would do. You know how when they load on some planes, they load you by groups? And I don't
Hmm.
even know how they select the groups. To me, it almost feels like, oh, yeah, she's group 3 and he's going to be group 6 or what. It almost feels random because some of these are like with Southwest, you want to be grouped early because you pick your seat. But a lot of these, the seats are already selected. So it's not like it's going to change where you're sitting on the plane. You're still sitting where you bought your seat. So what he would do we weren't grouped together, he was ahead of me, he would go ahead and then leave me behind to get on with my group, even though we were sitting next to each other. Why could you just not stand with me and walk on together? We're not losing the seat. It affects nothing. Why do we care what group we would go on? But it would matter. He would make sure he'd leave me. He'd do little subtle stuff like that. So I was even asking my sons, what would you do? It's like, well, we'd walk on together. If it mattered, we walk on together. Who would do that? But yet these are the things that they do. And what they do, though, is it deliberately makes you feel less than or invisible or replaceable, and so then
Insignificant.
you get, or the other thing, yes, or they play off that you're being paranoid. Why are you
Hmm.
questioning so much? Why do you need to know that? How come you're asking me? So it makes you feel like you can't just be a person with needs. You can't be a
Hmm.
person who ever has insecurities. That somehow all of this becomes dangerous that you have to like guard against so that you don't get hurt by this individual. It's
Hmm.
it's it and the thing that's so hard about this is, and this is what I see, Lisa, is that this damage, whether it's to your health or to your psychology, to your mental health, it lasts. It
Hmm.
lingers and continues to go forward with you into the future. I mean, these are things that I'm still trying to untangle and get out of my personality because I feel like it's got a hook in me, a barb in me. So I
Hmm.
really like actively have to like let go of this stuff. Is it something you find like you're working to try to heal from too? Has it had some lingering effects?
Yeah, it absolutely has. And I even think in the context of like, I talk about he used to work a lot. So we didn't spend a lot of time together. But when I would say, like, I haven't seen you in days and I want to spend time with you, it was like, what are you talking about? I just saw you yesterday. What are you talking about? We live together. We spend time together all the time. We don't. And I'm not even talking about like
Mm-hmm.
we're on the same couch, the same show is on, and that's not time together. I mean, like, literally, we're not even in the same room. We're not in the same house. You are at work and I am at home or I'm doing my own thing, but we're not together. But every time I would say, I want to spend time with you, it was like, why are you so needy? Why are you so clingy? Why are you so, and it
Mm-hmm.
made me want less and become smaller. But when I have moved on and, even expressing that I want to spend time with my partner or friends or anything, I'm always like, am I being needy? Am I asking for too much? Because he groomed me to believe that any needs I have are too much. So when you're trying to get yourself mentally well after this, and, I was taking anxiety medication, when can I stop? Right. And luckily I've been able to stop, but
Right.
I also recognize that some people are never able to. And there's no shame in taking medication. Plenty of people take it forever, and that's okay. But I wanted to be better and feel better and get over the scary things. I mean, honestly, I remember once an ex of mine was like, he couldn't find his keys. And I remember like, oh my God, I have to help him find his keys. No, I don't. He lost his keys. But because if my abuser lost his keys, the whole house had to stop immediately. And if you weren't immediately helping, you're lazy. What's your problem? You never do anything. It's your fault that I'm late. Meanwhile, like, I never touched the keys. To get over some of those trauma responses and those beliefs about yourself that you're unlikable or insignificant, that's really hard to get over. It takes a lot of work.
It does. It really does have a hangover, and I find that it has changed me in some ways. It's ways that I'm not all happy about. Maybe self-conscious about some things. And here's another change that I see in a lot of people is that they start to develop some mild form of agoraphobia,
Mm.
meaning that they start to find it hard to go out and do new things, meet new people, take on new risks or new challenges. That in a way, in order to create increased safety, you've made let your world get smaller, and
Mhm.
it's very hard for you to like feel that freedom or that confidence to go out and take that risk again. And I think there's for a couple of reasons. One is I feel like sometimes we blame ourselves for picking this person. I should have seen this. I should have realized this person wasn't safe for me because I made an error there. What other errors am I making so that I don't want to make more mistakes in the future? But I also think they undermine us and they make us question ourselves, question reality, question even our abilities. So then we get hesitant to take those types of risks. But the number of people I see who walk out of these relationships with some form of struggle is so huge. It's in fact, the statistics is when you normally have a traumatic event in your life, only 40% of the population struggle and need help. 60% of the population does pretty well, finds the way to get back on their feet. But 75% of people who have been in a narcissistically abusive relationship struggle to get back on their feet. Majority of us struggle to get back on our feet. So this is a really common problem. I would love us to talk about the fact that you and I offer coaching called Healing Strong, but I also want to then talk about what we're going to get into on the podcast extra. But why don't you tell them a little bit about Healing Strong? I know our next group is going to be in January. They also have a group in February as well as in April. But what have you really liked about this 12-week live group coaching program?
So I think the biggest thing is that you get this sense of community. And the one thing that I really hear that's such a common thread for people is that they've been isolated and that their friends and family don't understand and they feel really alone in what they're going through. And this is something that Healing Strong offers, is the community aspect of talking to other people, hearing other people's stories. And I cannot even describe to you how validating it is. I remember when I first started talking on TikTok and started making a page, and you're seeing these comments like "me too" and "oh, mine did this." It's like, wait a minute, I'm not by myself in this. You also made the same mistakes and you also believed the same garbage, and you feel so connected to people. So I think that's really helpful. But ultimately, you see all these people that are like, I got myself out of the relationship, but I still feel stuck, or I'm still ruminating, or I can't stop crying. I go to the grocery store and I have to like ditch the cart and go home. You feel so stuck. And the people are missing the actual skills that need to be built and some of the conversations that need to be had about closure and grief and the anger. Because people will tell you you can't be angry. Society doesn't give you permission to be angry, but how do you process that when nothing and no one around you lets you? So it's such a safe space for people to go through the 12 programs or the 12 modules and really build the skills and release what you need to release in a safe and small community of like-minded women.
I think it's also cool the fact that it's live and that you and I both take turns leading it. So they get to know me as well as they get to know you, and they get to be able to ask us direct questions and build a relationship with us while they're building a relationship with each other. So I also love just the personalized attention to it. So yeah, if people want to know more about it, I'm going to make sure to put the links to the show notes so that you can sign up for one of the upcoming episodes. But let's jump over to the podcast and talk about the first steps to healing from these long-lasting consequences of being in a narcissistically abusive relationship. And thank you so much for joining me today, Lisa, as always.
Thank you.